She used to say I didn't hold her enough. I remember standing at the sink, washing dishes one night, when she leaned against the counter behind me and said it like it was a passing observation, not a wound she was quietly letting bleed into the space between us. "You're not really affectionate," she said, swirling her wine like she wasn't expecting an answer. I turned, smiled like a man too used to conflict avoidance, and said, "I'll work on that." But the truth was, I didn't know I was failing in that way. I thought I'd been loving her with every spare second I had. I just didn't realize the way I loved wasn't the way she wanted to be loved anymore. She wanted warmth that wasn't measured in the hours I worked or the stability I gave. She wanted something softer, more deliberate. She wanted touches on the small of her back, just because. A hand on her knee during long drives. A kiss that didn't mean goodbye or goodnight, just, "I see you." I didn't know how far I'd fallen behind until I read her texts. But that's not how it starts. Not exactly. It starts with forgetting your password. I wasn't snooping. Not at first. Her laptop had signed itself out of Spotify, and she asked me to log her back in while she was in the shower. She called the password out from behind the steam, and I typed it in. And there it was. Autofill. The browser remembered everything she didn't think she had to hide. Her messages, her email, even her private chats. My hand hovered. I stared at the screen, willing myself to just close it. But I didn't. I clicked. There's a moment, and if you've been through it, you know, when you stop being the person you were 5 seconds ago. The moment you cross that invisible line. When you go from husband to investigator, from partner to stranger, standing in his own life, like an uninvited guest. That was me, eyes scanning a message thread between her and a man I didn't know existed before that second. His name was Jordan. I will never forget that. They weren't graphic, not immediately. They weren't even flirty in the conventional sense. But they had a rhythm, a tenderness, a way of speaking to each other like they shared a secret the world wasn't allowed to hear. She sent him photos I'd never seen. Nothing inappropriate, just her, sunlit, laughing, natural. The kind of moments she used to share with me, long before she started curating every smile for Instagram. And then, nestled between casual conversation about coffee shops and work deadlines, there it was. "I miss how safe you make me feel." He replied, "I'd hold you every night if I could." That was the moment. That's where everything shifted. Not the infidelity itself. That would come clearer later, but that line. "I'd hold you every night if I could." That was the thing she said I didn't do enough of. That was the thing she'd accused me of not giving her. And yet here she was, not just wanting affection, but giving and receiving it in full color, just not with me. She lied to my face, but she told him the truth. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I just shut down. My body felt too still for the weight that had just settled on my chest. There was no explosion, no thrown objects, no screaming into the void. Just silence. Pure, devastating silence. The kind of silence that follows a final breath. I closed the laptop before she got out of the shower, dried my hands on a towel that still smelled like her perfume, and I stood in the hallway for a long time, staring at the photos on the wall. Our wedding day. A trip to Maui. Her laughing with ice cream melting on her fingers. All moments frozen in time, before I realized they were already halfway lies. She came out of the bathroom humming, hair wrapped in a towel, face flushed, glowing in that way women do when they think they're safe in their own home. "You okay?" she asked, reading my stillness as stress, not devastation. "Yeah," I said, "just tired." And then I kissed her on the forehead. I kissed her with the knowledge that another man had been promising her the same thing I thought was mine to give. I kissed her like a goodbye she didn't hear. She leaned into it, sighing. That night, I lay in bed beside her, and I didn't touch her. Not out of spite, not because I was angry, but because I realized how far gone we were. Her body curled away from mine, facing the wall. I used to think that meant nothing, just sleep habits. But now I wondered how long she'd been turning her back on me long before I even noticed. And I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking not about him, but about me. About who I'd become. How I stopped bringing her coffee in the mornings. How I rushed out the door without saying I love you. How I forgot to notice the details. The new shade of lipstick, the subtle perfume change, the way she'd stopped laughing at my dumb jokes. I wasn't innocent. I just wasn't deceitful. That distinction mattered to me in a way I'm not sure she'll ever understand. By morning, the sun rose like it always did. And so did I. I went to work, smiled at clients, responded to emails, I let the world keep spinning while mine had cracked quietly in the night. But the clock had started ticking. Not for revenge. Not for confrontation. For closure. And when it came, I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't ask her why. I would just leave. But not before I cashed out. There's something oddly liberating about knowing a secret that changes everything. It's like carrying a match in your pocket when the room is soaked in gasoline. You don't light it. Not right away. You just walk through the space differently, knowing you can burn it all down if you choose. That was me in the days that followed. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even ask who he was or how long it had been going on. I just observed. Carefully. Quietly. Like a man watching the final act of a play he'd seen one too many times. The smallest things started standing out to me. How she smiled at her phone a little too long. How she hesitated when I asked if she wanted to do something together. How she used to send me texts during the day just to say she missed me, and now, silence. She had become affectionate. Just not with me. I started leaving earlier for work, staying later. It wasn't even intentional at first, just a way to avoid the weight of pretending. But somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't miss her absence. I missed who she used to be, who we used to be, and that's not the same thing. One night, she was on the couch, scrolling through her phone with a throw blanket over her legs. The TV was on, some Netflix series we'd never finished together. I stood in the doorway, watching her. The way her lips moved silently as she typed. The little smirk when she got a response. "Who you texting?" I asked casually, knowing the answer. She looked up, startled. "Oh, just Rachel. Work stuff." She said it too fast. Too practiced. I nodded, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a drink. And in that moment, I knew I was done. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just done. Like a man who finishes reading the last page of a book and knows he'll never open it again. That night, after she went to bed, I opened a secure browser and started liquidating. It began with the smaller assets, stocks, a few crypto holdings, and used accounts from years back. Then I moved on to the more serious ones. The investment property I'd bought in my name only. Sold. The joint savings? Quietly split, with my share moved into a new account she couldn't see. Even the cabin my grandfather left me in Vermont. It went into a trust. I wasn't stealing. I was safeguarding. She had someone else to make her feel safe. I was just making sure she didn't also get to feel entitled. And I kept my mouth shut. I smiled when she asked me to pick up takeout. I folded the laundry. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings. But every gesture felt like the final steps in a dance neither of us believed in anymore. The funny thing is, once I knew the truth, I started noticing all the signs I'd missed before. The changed passwords. The sudden interest in working late. The new lingerie that never made its way into our bedroom. Even the way she spoke to me, like I was background noise in her highlight reel. But the most painful thing? She stopped touching me. Completely. It wasn't even rejection, it was absence. No goodnight kiss. No brushing of fingers when she passed by. No lingering hugs after a long day. Just nothing. A physical silence so loud it rang in my bones. And yet, I still didn't confront her. Instead, I began collecting. Not evidence of the affair, that would come later. I started collecting myself. Pulling back every piece of me I'd poured into this marriage. My time. My care. My future. I rerouted all the automatic deposits, updated the beneficiaries on my life insurance, rewrote my will. I even took her off the emergency contact forms. If she was gone emotionally, I figured I'd just catch up logistically. One evening, she asked if we could take a weekend trip to the coast. Something to reconnect, she said. I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was the first time in months she had acknowledged the distance. I nodded, said sure. Booked the Airbnb under a prepaid Visa card I'd never used before. And when we got there, I watched her the whole time. She wore the same perfume she used to wear when we were dating. Told me she missed us. But I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't talking about me. She was talking about the idea of us. The version that made her feel safe and adored. The version that no longer existed. That night, she fell asleep before me. I sat on the deck outside, wrapped in a blanket, the ocean breeze hitting my face like a reminder. This was the last time I'd ever pretend to be hers. Because the next day, when she went for a morning walk, I borrowed her phone. I didn't guess the password. I didn't hack it. She'd left it open. And there it was. The same messages. The same man. Jordan. Only now they weren't subtle. They weren't coded. They were plans. Full-blown, detailed plans. Dinners. Vacations. What their life would look like once she figured things out with me. She called me cold in one message. Said she didn't think I even noticed her anymore. Said she felt seen with him. That one stuck. Because I had noticed. I just didn't realize I was watching a stranger wear my wife's skin. I locked the phone, set it gently back where she left it, and went back to the kitchen. Made coffee. Eggs. Played the part of the affectionate husband one last time. Because after that trip, it was over. Not with a fight. Not with accusations. But with a quiet morning, a signed notarization, and a bank transfer that left me untethered. Next came the PI. Because if she could plan a future with someone else while sleeping in my bed, she could also plan to take more than just her things when she left. But I was always better at planning. The morning I left, there were no fireworks. No bags thrown into the back seat. No slammed doors. Just a note. Folded once, placed gently next to her favorite mug, the one that said, "Love you more." I wrote it while the sun came up, soft light filtering through the blinds like the end of a long movie. You said I wasn't affectionate enough. You were right. But I wasn't cold. I was tired. Tired of reaching for someone already holding someone else. I read the messages. Don't call. This is me loving you enough to leave. I signed it. First name only. No anger. No bitterness. Just finality. And I left. I didn't cry. That surprised me again. I thought there'd be a moment of collapse. Maybe in the car, maybe halfway down the street. But instead, it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for months. Like I was stepping out of a house filled with gas, closing the door behind me before the match was ever lit. I didn't need to watch it burn. I just needed to walk away. The rest unfolded quickly. My attorney filed the paperwork within the week. We'd done the groundwork quietly, so all it took was a courier and a signature. She called me when she got the papers. Twice. I didn't pick up. Then came the text. Can we talk? And the one after that. I didn't mean for it to get this far. But it had. And she knew it. I could hear the panic hiding between the punctuation. That same day, the PI sent me the final report. Hotel stays. Flight receipts. Photos. There was even a rental car in my name she'd used to visit him 2 towns over. She'd planned a weekend with him during the same stretch. She told me she needed space to think. I sent it all to my lawyer. Not to ruin her, but to protect myself. She didn't know what I knew. And by the time she did, I'd already moved the accounts, the stocks, the assets she once casually called ours. It felt cold, clinical, but necessary. A week later, we sat in mediation. Her eyes darted to me across the table, searching for some hint of the man who used to carry her shoes when her feet got sore, who used to memorize her coffee order, even as it changed every 3 months. I could see her trying to reach that version of me with every blink. But he wasn't in the room anymore. Just a man who'd learned how to leave. She didn't fight hard at first. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. Maybe she believed I'd cave the way I used to, apologizing for things I didn't do, trying to fix the pieces of her that had been broken long before I arrived. But when the settlement proposal hit the table, something in her cracked. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering, trying to mask the visible shake in her hands. This isn't fair, she said quietly. I looked at her then. Really looked. Not as a husband. Not as the man who once saved up 2 months' salary to buy her that sapphire necklace. But as someone who'd loved her deeply and watched her slowly hand that love to someone else without flinching. You're right, I said. It's not fair. But it's final. She didn't cry. She just stared down at the papers. I saw it then, what she really lost. Not the money. Not the security. But the version of herself she'd built on top of my steady love. She thought I was a foundation she could keep walking on, even while she mapped out a future with someone else. But I had removed the ground beneath her, quietly, thoroughly. I left the building alone. No dramatic exit. Just a breath in the parking lot that tasted like freedom. The kind that hurts a little going down. Weeks passed. The text stopped. I heard from mutual friends that things didn't work out with Jordan. No surprise. Affairs are built in dark corners. Sunlight tends to rot them fast. I sold the house. Donated her clothes she never bothered to pack. Took a job across the country. Something slower. Calmer. I live by the coast now. Mornings smell like salt and eucalyptus. I drink my coffee in silence. Not because I'm lonely, but because peace doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes I think about the moment I read those messages. Not with pain, but with clarity. She needed more affection. I understand that now. But instead of telling me, instead of asking for the love she craved, she outsourced it. And when I didn't collapse, when I didn't fight for her, she realized affection wasn't what she wanted after all. She wanted someone who wouldn't walk away. But I did. Not out of pride. Out of self-respect. And I didn't cry. I cashed out. And I moved on.